It's new Mega Drive game time again, this time another release from Kai Magazine Software. I've been a big fan of their games released for the Mega Drive so far, Metal Dragon, Life on Mars and Life on Earth. What I really appreciate about their games is they pick a different genre every time. Metal Dragon was a vertical run and gun, Life on Mars was a Metroidvania style platform shooter, and Life on Earth was a more traditional run and gun action game. Well, they've gone for a new genre yet again with their new release, The Secret of the Four Winds. Oscar at Kai Magazine Software told me that this game cost more and took more resources than all of their previous games put together, so needless to say I was excited and intrigued by this game. This is an adventure RPG I suppose, and is quite ambitious for an indie Mega Drive game. It's not without its flaws sadly, which we'll get to. The game features a lot of gameplay with a story inspired by Celtic folklore. Before we discuss the game any further, let's have a look at the packaging. Kai Magazine Software kindly sent over this review copy, and it's the collector's edition which comes in this shockbox style case. Inside we have an amulet depicting a Celtic symbol which is part of the game's story in a felt bag. As well, we have a concepts and development book which depicts art from the game, sprites, the cutscenes and some concept drawings. Then there's the game itself. This is the PAL blue spine style case. The sleeve is reversible, both sides are the same blue spine style, but one has the more realistic art style and one the anime style. Inside we have the cartridge itself, some art postcards, and a manual which is split into English, Spanish and Japanese. I highly recommend you read the manual thoroughly for this game to familiarise yourself with the game's mechanics. This is an in-depth RPG, not a run and gun shooter that you can just pick up and play. There's also a note added to the box letting you know that the game will only work on original Mega Drive Mark 1 and Mark II consoles, as well as the Mega SG. I played this on my Model 1 Mega Drive with the audio out from the headphone jack, and they recommend to use this method or use headphones as the sound is absolutely phenomenal in this game. More on that shortly. Also sent to me was another little felt bag containing this intriguing wooden box engraved with the game's title. This is a cute little USB drive, again with a wooden facade containing the press kit. This has artwork of all sorts on, as well as information on research they did for the game's story. Think Celtic folklore and druids like Stonehenge. It's currently available to order on their website for €65, linked below. There are 4 covers available, this blue spine PAL version, a classic Mega Drive PAL version, a Red Genesis one and Japanese. All of them are reversible with the different art styles on each side. Now onto the game. I have been playing this extensively for weeks as there is a lot of gameplay here. The first thing I want to mention is the music in this game. This is something I usually talk about towards the tail end of a review, but it's just so impressive I have to mention it first. This game somehow has CD quality sound on a Mega Drive cartridge. Kai Magazine Software say this is done via a special chip inside the cart, and let me tell you, it is absolutely phenomenal. The first time I loaded up the game and heard that intro music, I could not believe my ears. It sounds absolutely amazing. The intro goes from jazzy, old-timey detective music to rock metal and 80s synth. Incredible. Let me play a brief clip of the intro as you have to hear it for yourself, and remember this is recorded from a stock Mega Drive with no Mega CD via an OSSC. They recommend unplugging your Mega CD while playing the game, which I did, so perhaps that interferes with the sound somehow. There is a full CD quality soundtrack to the game as well as a full FM soundtrack, and you can switch between the two at any time in the game's pause menu settings. This keeps things a bit fresher. If you get a bit tired of a particular track, you can just switch to the other version. For the most part I played the game with the CD quality music, but did mix it up with some FM here and there. As you saw earlier, cutscenes in the game are pretty cool looking and progress the story nicely. The story, as I mentioned, is inspired by Celtic folklore, but I would say it's heavily supernatural in theme. I found the story a bit disjointed in parts, but overall it was easy enough to follow. The gist is that some evil supernatural beings called the Fomor have invaded our world, and it's up to our team to stop them. Along the way you'll encounter some odd characters, I hope you're okay with taking orders from a fish, seek out information, and see a few twists in the tale. While the narrative didn't blow me away, the ending was quite sweet, and the choices you make throughout the game do affect the game's ending and the relationships between the three characters. Yes, in The Secret of the Four Winds you control 3 characters simultaneously, or at least you do after the very early game when you've met them all. You control one principal character at a time, with the other 2 being controlled by computer AI. Wherever you guide your character, the other 2 will follow. The 3 characters are a rugged detective called Owl, a 2,000-year-old druid called Angus, and a policewoman known only as Boss, with a skirt so short you can see what she had for lunch. Al is armed with a spectral gun, a magical weapon which he finds early in the game. He can shoot enemies with this, but cannot use spells. Angus is basically a wizard and uses magic to attack enemies. Boss has a supernatural bow and arrow and can also use spells. In the start menu you can set behaviours for each of the 3 characters in this priorities section, which means how they'll behave when you're not directly controlling them, or in other words, what the AI should do. You can dictate how they attack and defend, and also what they do if they have spell amulets equipped, but I'll come back to that. The controls are simple, although aiming and shooting does take a bit of getting used to. You hold B to aim and press A to fire. Holding B brings up a target reticle that you can move around the screen using the D-pad, and as a result your character is always static while attacking. If you don't fancy holding down B, you can set it to a single press in the game settings. Either way, you'll be holding down A, and some of the longer boss fights, over 10 minutes, almost gave me a repetitive strain injury. C changes character or uses a secondary weapon if targeting with B. Secondary weapons are the various spells you can use by equipping the various magical amulets. As I said, aiming like this is a bit weird to begin with, but actually works really well once you get the hang of it. While you're not aiming, holding down A lets you run. If there are no enemies in your vicinity, you can run indefinitely with no stamina cost. If there are enemies present, a stamina bar will appear, and once depleted, you will no longer be able to run. A is also interact to engage with people and objects. Pressing start accesses the game's menu. This is where you'll see all sorts of info related to each of your characters, and you can cycle through them using the D-pad. At the top is your character's stats. Stamina is your character's health, but also dictates how far they can run. Aim is your chance to hit. Evasion is your chance to dodge and attack. Now you may wonder, as I did, why these 2 stats are able to go above 100%. Surely aim at 100% means 100% chance to hit. Well, no. From what I understand having played the game, the 2 stats work as opposites, so you as the attacker have a chance to hit, while the defender has a chance to evade. The 2 stats combine to make a final chance to hit, so if I have 100% chance to hit and then I attack an enemy with 90% chance to evade, then my chance to hit is actually only 10%. So if my evade stat is high enough relative to an enemy's attack stat, I can literally never take damage from that enemy again. It's basically akin to tabletop dice rolling RPG mechanics. I'm guessing here, so I'm not exactly sure how it works, but I do know that I got to the point where certain enemies were completely unable to harm me. Next we have the critical chance and critical evasion stats, which are the exact same but for crits. And then speed, which isn't, as you might imagine, your movement speed, but rather the speed at which the character can fire. A higher speed means more frequent projectiles. Under that we have equipment, which might as well be called amulets because that's all you're ever able to equip. Each character can equip up to 4 at any one time. Amulets can be bought from the shop, which you'll come across quite early on, or are occasionally found in hidden crates in the game. Amulets do various things. They can boost one of your 5 stats, boost your damage or defense. Your damage and defense stats are just to the right of the equipment section of the menu, showing damage, critical damage, and your physical and supernatural defense stats. Your defense stats are 0 by default and can only be increased using amulets. A protection amulet for physical defense and a soul amulet for supernatural defense. Some have detrimental effects too. For example, the strength amulet increases your attack power but reduces your attack speed, hence the minus here by my speed stat. Below that is the priority section, which we already covered, and then to the right of that are your skill points and XP. XP is earned in-game by defeating enemies, and when an enemy is defeated, all your characters will gain XP regardless of who actually killed the enemy. Every time you level up, you gain 1 skill point, and the amount of XP required to level up increases by 1 point each time. It doesn't actually track your level as such, but you start on 20 XP required, so you can see in this screenshot I have leveled up this character 1024 times to get to 1044 XP required. You spend your skill points on increasing your 5 stats at the top. To level up a stat, you'll need to spend as many skill points as the current level of that stat. So take my evasion stat here. To increase it from level 26 to 27, I will need to spend 26 skill points. Finally, at the bottom we have the items menu. This shows all your gear, i.e. amulets, potions and story items. Any items equipped will show a letter beside them to indicate who has it equipped. An A for Al, N for Angus and B for Boss. Why they chose 2 characters with names beginning with A when they knew this was a feature, I'll never know. Health potions are costly at 100 money each, and you can carry a maximum of 100 of each item. Sounds like a lot, but these health restoration potions only restore 10 health at a time, so you will burn through them quick. Bear in mind that items like health potions can only be used on a conscious character, so if a character is already downed, then there's no reviving them. Once you clear an area of enemies, your companions will revive with a small amount of health, or leave the area entirely to safety, which fully restores all 3 characters' health bars. Simply equipping a spell amulet isn't enough to fire projectiles, you will also need to purchase charges for the spell. These have varying costs, 10 for the fire spell and more for the light and darkness spell. Each is more effective on certain enemy types. How I played the game was pretty much to use Al all the time with his gun and have Angus and Boss as support characters, with Angus using one of the attacking spells. You can set the desired AI behaviour for the spell equipped. For attacking spells you can say fire the spell when there are more than 3 or 6 enemies on screen, or just all the time. And the health restore spell has options for when to use it, with varying percentages of health triggering the use of the spell. Bottom right is the amount of goo and money you have. Supernatural enemies drop goo when defeated, and human enemies drop money. You can also find both hidden around the game world. Money is used to buy items such as the various amulets, their charges and potions like the health restoration potion. Goo is used in the shop to upgrade items. You can upgrade the power of your amulets by 1 level for a set amount of goo, and that amount increases each time you upgrade a particular amulet. The current level of all your amulets can be seen in the items menu. In the shop you can also sell items, which to be honest you won't be doing often. You can also exchange goo for money, which is something I would not recommend doing. Money can be farmed quite easily later on, and goo is far more useful. Having said that, you will need an absolute ton of cash. Some bosses took an entire batch of 100 health potions for me to beat, which at 100 money a pop cost 10 grand, and you'll likely burn through several hundred of these over the course of the game. Every time the story progresses, a new area is unlocked. You travel between areas in your car, which is done via a simple text list of locations. The first option is always exit, which means go back to the area you're currently at. A new location will usually provide some sort of clue or a new person to talk to, and almost always a new location brings with it a leap in difficulty. So many times I'd leveled up my characters to the point where I felt pretty tough, only to reach a new area and start getting absolutely rinsed. If you die at any point, as in all 3 of your characters are downed, you'll be returned to a safe space. This is usually the police station. Here you can also occasionally find freelance jobs which seem to trigger at certain points in the story. These side missions involve returning to a previously cleared area which has now been overrun with different enemies. These enemies are usually very tough relative to your characters at that point in the story, but the jobs also reward you with a decent amount of cash. Some locations have these phone boxes which are save points. Simply press A to interact while there are no enemies present and the game will save. Sadly there's only one save file, so at the main menu you just have the options continue and new game. You'll also find these vending machines which will completely restore your whole party's stamina for a mere 1 money. Again, it only works if no enemies are present. Alternatively, just leave an area and immediately come back, as this will completely restore all stamina too, which is useful if you're farming XP. That's probably a good point to talk about farming, or perhaps a better term is grinding, and this game has a ton of grinding which I am not a fan of at all. A bit is okay, but this game makes it necessary to grind for several hours. As I mentioned, new areas bring with them challenging new enemies. Sometimes it's even best to just run for it, making a break for it while the rest of your party serve as distractions. But often that isn't an option, you must fight. So what do? Well, you level up. Grinding not only rewards you with XP and therefore skill points with which to level up, but it rewards you with money and goo to buy amulets and upgrade them. Leveling up your stats and having powered up amulets combined with a healthy supply of potions is paramount. This grinding really wore on me at points and will likely affect my willingness to replay this game. It desperately needs a difficulty setting or at least a level up faster mode kind of thing. Either way, it needs a way to speed things along. As R. Kelly said, ain't nothing wrong with a little bump and grind, but if we took R. Kelly's advice on what's acceptable, we'd all be covered in piss. Enemies vary a fair bit, but perhaps not enough. The enemy variety would probably be sufficient were it not for the grinding aspect, which makes the enemies feel more monotonous than they would otherwise. Enemies take different amounts of damage to kill, and as a result reward you with different levels of XP. You'll earn 10 XP from these early shadowy enemies, but over 200 from stronger enemies later on. Different enemies have different weaknesses to certain spells, as I mentioned earlier with the attacking amulets. Supernatural enemies are either light or dark and are prone to their opposite amulet, and human enemies are prone to fire. All spells damage all enemies, they're just half as effective if you use the wrong one. Some enemies can poison you, which can be counteracted by using a poison antidote potion, but honestly it was never much of an issue for me. Bosses are unfortunately very tedious. You're basically just firing endlessly, hoping that you have sufficient firepower and health potions to outlast them. Some bosses took over 10 minutes of this, while holding down A and B almost led to that repetitive strain injury I mentioned. With bosses, your maximum health is largely irrelevant because you're just endlessly using health restore potions anyway, which only restore 10 health, so upping your max health doesn't help as you're still renewing 10 hit points at a time. Bosses also have no health bar, which I always dislike. At least you can see what damage is being done, indicated by the numbers on impact, but the fights take so long I would have appreciated knowing how far along I was getting. The story is a bit odd in places, but I do admire its ambition. Some of the dialogue is absolutely mental, and I'm not sure if some of it was just lost in translation, vagina jokes, that's what she said innuendo and so on. Some of it is genuinely amusing though, like a fourth wall break where a character moans about having to travel so far back and forth to talk to someone, funny because it mirrored my own thoughts at the time. Locations are quite varied with caves, lakes, countryside, woodland, warehouses, cities and more, and while the graphics don't wow me, it looks decent overall. Some of the areas actually have a lot of detail in them should you stop to notice. The cutscenes are excellent and are a noticeable step up in quality. As I said, I spent almost all of my time playing as Al in this game. There's one main reason for that, and it's that Al's spectral gun can shoot through absolutely any obstacle. This includes any in-game object and even solid walls. As long as you can see the enemy on the screen, you can shoot them. This is a world away from Angus and Boss, whose attacks will stop as soon as they hit something. This goes the other way too though, so enemy attacks will not penetrate obstacles unless they are bullets, so an enemy soldier can shoot you through cover, but a supernatural attack won't reach you. That's good news as most enemies are supernatural in nature, so you can play as Al, use cover whenever possible, meaning that you can shoot enemies but they can't hit you. One very annoying consequence of this playstyle is that you have to make sure that your computer controlled pals aren't shooting their attacks into an obstacle. The AI is not very clever. This is particularly bad if you have one of them firing off expensive spells which are just slamming into a wall or something instead of hitting an enemy. I found I had to coax them into line of sight by coming out of cover because they will always follow you, which had the disadvantage of exposing me to attacks. Allies can also get stuck on scenery and walls too, so sometimes I found myself having to go back to coax them free. Another two niggles I have with the game are that the A button would constantly interact with things that I didn't mean to interact with. If your character interacts with something inert, a message pops up saying nothing suspicious. Well, because you press B to aim and A to shoot, naturally I would go to press both at the same time. But when in cover, it was constantly registering A first and interacting me with the scenery I was using as cover. Well annoying. The other is a big one, and it's that there's no real skill progression throughout the entire game aside from the very early game when you're learning the ropes. You're just as good at this game 4 hours in as you are 30 hours in. It's all about having better stats, better gear and a full bank of potions. There's no such thing as being good at the game really. But I will say that despite the dullness of having to grind, earning and spending your skill points and spending your goo and upgrades can be satisfying. My final thoughts on The Secret of the Four Winds, well, I really appreciate what they've tried to do here. They've managed to make a game that's very different from all the other indie Mega Drive games we've seen, with some fantastic ideas and quite deep gameplay mechanics, but I just can't help but feel they didn't stop to think, is this fun? Because there are just too many grindy bits that are not only tedious but break up the flow of the story too much. And really, fun is the most important part of any game, isn't it? So this was an ambitious vision, quite well realised, that missed out on being truly great because of some less than entertaining gameplay decisions. Does that mean that you shouldn't play it? Absolutely not. I think it's got a lot going for it, and many people will be thrilled to see a game of this unique style on the console. And to be honest, you should check it out just for this epic music. Anyway, please do let me know your thoughts in the comments because I'm genuinely intrigued about what people think about this one. Thanks again to Kai Magazine Software, and thank you for watching.